Qiji, Song of Sun on Sun. Sun on sun, the sun goes up in the east. Sun on sun, the sun sinks into the west. Even though he may have the appearance of a divine transcendent, still he will turn to rotten bones. Drifting clouds are snuffed out but born again. Fragrant plants will die, then emerge again. This I do not know. The men of 1,000 ages, a myriad ages past, buried over there in the blue-green hills, what things are they now? So we continue with an example of Buddhist monk poetry, which, as we mentioned repeatedly, tends to be underrepresented in the 300 Tang Poems anthology. So this poem was written by Qiji, secular name Hu de Sheng. And he is a late Tang monk poet, very similar to Guangxu, of which we've had occasion to talk about. They're very similar in many respects. They met actually and were friends and interchanged poems. If you remember, some of the things we said about Guangxu, well, they repeat themselves in Qiji. So Qiji is a native of the south of the area of Changsha. Lived, as we say, in the last years of the Tang dynasty, in the early years of the period of the Six Dynasties. And he was an orphan, precocious youth. Legend has it that while he was in the monastery as a kid, he wrote poems on the hide of cows. He was acting as a cowherd. And eventually he was ordained as a monk, and then, traveled around for quite some time, but ended settling up very close to his native area in what was the small kingdom of Nanping, in very close to the area where the Yangtze flows out of its gorges. So this was a small, relatively insignificant state during the Six Dynasties, but it was prosperous and stable. And so it acted as a good base for Qiji in the same way that the state of Shu to the west acted as a stable base for Guangxu. Okay, so Qiji, not much more to say about him or his career. He became a high intellectual and monk in that small kingdom of Nanping. Not six dynasties, it's 5 dynasties. Sorry for the mistake. And, well, he was an important monk and poet, very closely associated with Hengshan, the great mountain of the south, and with the area of Lake Dongting, which appears in a lot of poets and poems, but especially those who have either lived around Lake Dongting or are from the south and have become enamored with its sights and its legends. Okay, so the poem we've read today is, pretty well. First of all, Qiji has a very big register. He has poems about a lot of stuff, perhaps a little bit less so than Guangxu. Lots of poems about nature, about Lake Dongting, about flowers, about the past. Reflections, shadows in nature, this sort of stuff. You could say sacred scenes, sacred places. But you could say a theme that runs through all his poetry and that is well represented in the poem we've read today is the atmosphere of transience and fragility. This a very Buddhist and also medieval European idea of the ephemerality of earthly glory, of beauty, success, power. They're all just silly games and impermanent stuff that disappears. And, Buddhism would push you towards seeking, a release from this world of illusion and from any attachments to it to attain the real reality that goes beyond appearances. Okay, we could say that's the topic of this poem. The topic of this poem is all-conquering time, the conqueror warm, everything shall be destroyed, both the sun and you have these images of things that are destroyed and renewed, like clouds and plants. The impossibility of coming back. It also contains, you could say it's slightly polemic. You could say that it's taking a dig at Taoist philosophy. Remember, Taoists, as opposed to Buddhists, believe, or some Taoists at least believe, that you could, through certain exercises, practices, attain immortality and be able to shed or improve your mortal coil and be able to live forever. And this poem clearly seems to be making fun or slightly disparaging these Taoist thoughts, these Taoist streams of transcendence. Yeah. Okay. There's also a tone of tranquility and equanimity in many poems, apparently, of Qiji, but that's not particularly clear here. Another thing that is interesting in this poem, it's very irregular in its meter. The meter is, I'm trying to take a look at it, but I don't think it's a regular meter like the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has like combination of juxtaposed 5 and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines. Well, it's an irregular meter. And as you might have noticed, the first couplet is particularly weird with its references to sun. Like it repeats the graph of sun or day, because it has both possible meanings 6 times in the first 2 verses. And there's many ways of reading these first 2 lines. Such a repetition in such a brief amount of space would have probably shocked a conventional Tang reader. Well, so let's look at the poem couplet by couplet, including the first one. Sun on sun, the sun goes up in the east. Sun on sun, the sun sinks into the west. So, these are typical images of the sun's movement. The sun is not stable. It doesn't stay in the same place all the time. It just, moves around. The first 2 lines could also be read day by day. The sun goes up in the east. Day by day, the sun sinks into the west. Because remember, the character for sun is the same as the character. Can be sun sometimes, can be day other times. So, the passage of time, the regularity, how the sun, comes up and goes down. And it's another sun and another sun and another sun, but still the same sun. It feels like different suns because, it follows a cycle and it comes in the east, goes down in the west, and every day is different, but the sun is the same. So it would be pointing towards some degree of stability and mortality. The sun as an image of this Taoist transcendent who is not affected by the passage of time, perhaps. The second couplet clearly goes against this sort of reading, though. Even though he may have the appearance of divine transcendent, still he will turn to rotten bones. So the sun, who looks immortal, he will also bite the dust. Yeah? He looks like one of these heavenly Taoistic deities, but no, he will rot, he will die, he will decay, he will disappear, like everything. It's nothing stable from a Buddhist perspective. It's just a matter of big amounts of time. Third couplet. And the third couplet illustrates, so the sun is this perpetually renewing but also disappearing entity, and you have lots of these in nature. The third couplet just recapitulates on some of these. Drifting clouds are snuffed out, but born again. Fragrant plants will die, then emerge again. This is the cycle of nature, and ultimately, this is the cycle of samsara as well, of a Buddhist resurrection. Like, things die, but then other things like those come back, or some elements from the previous entity transmogrify to some other elements in the cosmos. But there's this cycle. Clouds come, clouds go. Plants come, plants go, plants go. There's the ephemerality of everything, the instability. And finally, the last couplet, it's composed of a rhetorical question as well. This I do not know, for men of 1,000 ages, a myriad ages past, buried over there in the blue-green hills. What things are they now? What is it that the poetic persona ends up sighing at not knowing? The people of the past, but not only the people of the past. This is a conventional topic. Where are the Ubi sunt of Western literature? Where are those great figures of antiquity? They're dead and gone forever. So there's no communication possible with those great figures of the past. But even beyond that, the last line tells us that it's not so much that communication with them is impossible, it's that we don't even know what has become of them. You could say they have rotted under those hill tombs in which they are interred, and become worms and earth and plants. But on a more metaphysical and Buddhist perspective, they've transformed into other things. Maybe they've become spirits in hell. Maybe they've attained samsara and broken from the wheel of reincarnations. Maybe they have become other humans because of their karma, or maybe because of good or evil karma. They have become animals or gods. So, very interesting Buddhist poem to include here in our expanded anthology.